A new study shows 2025 was the worst year on record for online child sexual abuse material. Joining us to discuss this is Dani Pinter, Chief Legal Officer at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. So, Dani, good afternoon. And the study by the Internet Watch Foundation says there's been a 26,000% rise in realistic AI videos of child sexual abuse. Very staggering number. And these often include recognizable child victims. What are your initial thoughts on this whole situation?
Well, it's obviously horrific and bad for society, but more concerning is that I think this was preventable and foreseeable. We've been warning that unless there's common sense safeguards on AI, that this is exactly what would happen. So it's distressing to see that that is coming true, but we're hopeful that we can do something about it.
Do you think it's because these advances in AI, which have been very fast, they lower the barrier for someone, to create harmful material, especially against children?
Exactly. So, this is something predators and child pornographers have tried to do since tech was far behind. They were taking magazines and clipping children into pornographic materials. So, this is not surprising. But now, with this open source AI and how rapidly it's become available, anybody can make hyper realistic, complex CSAM videos without much technical expertise. And so that's frightening and will lead to only a more exponential increase if we don't do something about it now.
So these images are artificially generated and not actual photos. What kind of harm can this still create for children and families? And how do we prevent that and contain that harm?
Well, you mentioned earlier that some of them are identifiable children. So for the children whose first, original and innocent photo was made pornographic, they're directly harmed by that. And we've heard from survivors of that kind of abuse that they feel very violated, traumatized, in addition to it increasing actual danger for them, as these predators tend to become stalkers and try to find these children and harm them. So it creates that harm, but also we're desensitizing society to child sexual abuse, which we know increases the occurrence of that kind of abuse. Individuals who previously never engaged with that kind of content will start to engage in it. There's been studies that show that. So this increases the number of predators, that increases the demand for this material, which will increase the harm to actual children and to society at large.
So how do we stop this? How do we mitigate it, reduce the harm?
Yeah, so there's definitely things we can do. And so we've been calling on AI companies to put in place common sense regulation. So, for example, right now, these AI companies could make it impossible for their tool to manipulate images or videos of children, for example, particularly if these are prepubescent children. Of course, it gets harder the older the child is, but there are things that these AI companies could do right now. So we expect them to do that. But if they don't act fast enough, we need to pass common sense federal and we argue even state regulations that would require the AI companies to take these measures to protect children and prevent this egregious material.
Okay, so to your point of passing new regulation, as of right now, what does the law currently say about creating these materials using AI?
Well, in the United States, these images are still illegal to create. So I would argue that certainly individuals using these tools have violated the law and potentially these companies, depending on what they knew or how they facilitated this. So that's why we call on the DOJ to investigate. But there's still loopholes and uncertainty on what these companies themselves, what their responsibilities are. And so to that end, we would like to see regulations on the AI companies themselves so we can prevent this from happening before it happens.
Okay, I'm wondering if there's a role that parents can play in this situation. What are your comments on that?
Well, I think parents should not allow or at least be very vigilant in allowing their kids to interact with these AI tools. So, just to reiterate, parents should either not allow their children to use them or be extremely involved and supervising as much as humanly possible their children in the use of these tools, because every image that these tools have access to, we can see now can be turned into this harmful material. And this is also why now we all need to be extremely careful about what pictures and images we put online, because these AI tools are now gobbling up those images and they're getting fed into the system and can now be used to harm people, including children.
Okay, Danny, just one final question. If someone sees harmful material online, what should they do? Should they report it? What are the next steps?
Absolutely. So they should report it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children or the Internet Watch Foundation if they're outside the United States. But the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, that's where they should report it. They will funnel those reports to law enforcement and importantly work on taking down and hashing the image. But even for images that are not of children, I encourage you to report at least to the platform, if not authorities, because right now in the United States, this type of non-consensual images are illegal under the Take It Down Act, and these platforms have an obligation to remove the images.
All right, Danny, thank you so much for sharing your insight on this important topic.
Absolutely, thank you.